Imagine a book that bridges the gap between the Old and New Testaments, telling the story of a heroic family who rose against oppression and defended their faith with unparalleled courage. This is the story of the Maccabees, a tale filled with valor, sacrifice, and divine intervention. But despite its historical and spiritual significance, the book of Maccabees was excluded from most versions of the Bible. Why? What secrets does it hold? And what can we learn from this remarkable account of faith and perseverance? Let's uncover the forgotten story of the Maccabees, exploring their battles, their legacy, and the reasons their story was relegated to the sidelines of biblical history. To understand the book of Maccabees, we must first immerse ourselves in its historical backdrop. The events described in the books take place during the 2nd century BCE, a tumultuous period for the Jewish people. Palestine, also known as Judea, was under the control of the Seleucid Empire, a Hellenistic kingdom that arose after the fragmentation of Alexander the Great's empire. At this time, the Seleucid ruler Antiochus IV Epiphanes sought to unify his kingdom by imposing Hellenistic culture and religion on all his subjects. For the Jewish people, this was not merely a political imposition but a spiritual crisis. Antiochus' decrees outlawed Jewish practices such as circumcision, Sabbath observance, and adherence to dietary laws. Worse still, he desecrated the temple in Jerusalem, erecting an altar to Zeus and sacrificing unclean animals within its sacred walls. 1 Maccabees 1:41-64. This act of blasphemy, known as the abomination of desolation, ignited outrage and despair among the faithful. The Hellenization policies of Antiochus were not just cultural, they represented a direct assault on the Jewish covenant with God. Many Jews faced a harrowing choice: conform to the king's decrees or face persecution and death. Families were torn apart, communities were devastated, and the faith of the nation was tested as never before. It was in this dark hour that a small group of Jews, led by the priest Mattathias and his sons, rose up in defiance. Their story would become the foundation of the Maccabean revolt. The historical context also reveals the complex interplay of politics and religion during this period. The Jewish people were caught between the empires of the Seleucids to the north and the Ptolemies to the south, both of whom vied for control of the strategically significant land of Judea. This constant tug-of-war left the Jewish people vulnerable to cultural and military pressures, shaping the environment in which the Maccabean uprising took place. Understanding these dynamics helps us appreciate the courage and conviction of the Maccabees, who stood firm in their faith against overwhelming odds. The story of the Maccabees begins with Mattathias, a devout priest from the village of Modian. When Antiochus's officers arrived in the village to enforce the king's decrees, they demanded that Mattathias offer a pagan sacrifice as a sign of loyalty. But Mattathias refused, declaring, "Even if all the nations that live under the rule of the king obey him and have chosen to obey his commandments, I and my sons and my brothers will continue to live by the covenant of our ancestors." 1 Maccabees 2:19-20. In a moment of righteous fury, Mattathias killed the officer and a fellow Jew who had stepped forward to make the sacrifice. This act of defiance marked the beginning of the Maccabean revolt. Mattathias and his sons fled to the hills, where they gathered a band of followers willing to fight for their faith and freedom. Among his sons was Judah, later known as Judah Maccabee, or Judah the Hammer, who would emerge as the leader of the rebellion after Mattathias's death. Judah's leadership was marked by a series of extraordinary military victories. Despite being vastly outnumbered and poorly equipped, the Maccabean forces employed guerrilla tactics to outmaneuver the Seleucid armies. Their victories were seen as evidence of divine favor, affirming the righteousness of their cause. In one of the most significant battles, Judah and his forces recaptured Jerusalem and purified the desecrated temple. This event is commemorated in the Jewish festival of Hanukkah, also known as the Festival of Lights. The Maccabean revolt was not merely a military campaign, it was a spiritual struggle to preserve the covenant with God. Each battle was fought not just for political independence, but for the right to worship freely and live according to the Torah. The courage and faith of the Maccabees inspired future generations, reminding them that even in the darkest times, God's light could not be extinguished. The books of Maccabees, primarily 1 and 2 Maccabees, provide detailed accounts of the revolt and its aftermath. While 1 Maccabees offers a straightforward historical narrative, 2 Maccabees takes a more theological approach, emphasizing the themes of martyrdom, divine justice, and the resurrection of the dead. 1 Maccabees chronicles the rise of the Maccabees, their battles, and their eventual establishment of the Hasmonean dynasty. The book highlights the faith and determination of the Maccabean leaders, presenting them as champions of the Jewish people and defenders of the covenant. It also provides insights into the political and social challenges faced by the Jewish community during this tumultuous period. 2 Maccabees, on the other hand, focuses on the spiritual dimensions of the struggle. It recounts stories of Jewish martyrs who chose death over apostasy, such as the elderly scribe Eleazar and the 7 brothers who were tortured for refusing to eat pork. So 2 Maccabees 6:18-31, 7:1-42. These stories emphasize the hope of resurrection and the belief that faithfulness to God will be rewarded in the afterlife. The theological richness of 2 Maccabees also includes reflections on the role of divine providence in human history. The text portrays the victories of the Maccabees as acts of God, reminding readers that ultimate deliverance comes not through human strength, but through divine intervention. This perspective offers a powerful message of hope and encouragement to those facing trials and persecution. The exclusion of the books of Maccabees from the Hebrew Bible and most Protestant canons can be attributed to several factors. 1. Canonical criteria. The Jewish canon, finalized in the 1st century CE, excluded texts written in Greek, as the books of Maccabees were. The decision to focus on Hebrew and Aramaic texts reflected a desire to preserve the linguistic and cultural heritage of the Jewish people. 2. Theological concerns. The books of Maccabees include teachings that were controversial in later Christian theology, such as the intercession of saints and prayers for the dead. So 2 Maccabees 12:39-45. These doctrines played a significant role in the debates surrounding the Protestant Reformation, leading to the exclusion of the books from Protestant Bibles. 3. Historical shifts. By the time of the early church, the Hasmonean dynasty, established by the Maccabees, had become associated with corruption and political intrigue. This tarnished their legacy and may have contributed to the marginalization of their story in Christian tradition. Despite their exclusion from most Bibles, the story of the Maccabees continues to inspire believers around the world. Their courage and faith serve as a reminder of the power of devotion and the enduring strength of God's people. The festival of Hanukkah, which celebrates their victory and the rededication of the temple, remains a testament to their legacy. The Maccabees also challenge us to reflect on the cost of faith and the sacrifices required to stand firm in the face of opposition. Their story invites us to consider our own commitment to God and to draw strength from their example of unwavering devotion. The story of the Maccabees is more than a historical account. It is a spiritual beacon that illuminates the path of faith, courage, and perseverance. As we remember their sacrifices and victories, may we be inspired to stand firm in our own faith, trusting in God's promises and drawing strength from His eternal light. The Maccabees remind us that even in the darkest times, the flame of faith can never be extinguished.